What exactly is happening here? Shakespearean at Uber.
I know,
as
it's
always.
crazy. It's always some surprise. What seems to have been happening is that behind the scenes there's been this renegotiations of the part of this auto acquisition 2 years ago so that Uber could really invest in Uber Freight, their sort of human trucking logistics business. And once those negotiations got settled with Anthony Lewandowski and Leo Ron, then sort of it cleared the way for Ron to come back now that he's sort of at peace with the company to sort of lead that effort.
But is he really at peace, Lane? I mean, is there a risk here bringing back someone who has some baggage?
I mean, I think there are a lot of people that have worked at Uber over the past 2 or 3 years who maybe are entertaining coming back now that there's new leadership in place that still have something to offer the company. But the reality is there's not a lot of people with expertise in this space. So Uber doesn't have a deep bench to pick from.
Let's talk a little bit about the bench, Eric, because we've seen the head of HR resign.
Right, Leanne Hornsey.
Yep. In the midst of an internal investigation into whether she was ignoring complaints from employees, a very high-profile woman at the company. What really happened there?
There's a lot we don't know. I mean, there was this investigation. There had been an internal whistleblower that had complained, and those correspondence came out. And, you know, lawyers basically told the whistleblower there were some things that we could confirm, some things we can't. We're not going to tell you which. And their chief legal officer, you know, basically said, you know, trying sort of these issues in the court of public opinion isn't a great idea and that it can be unfair. But then ultimately, you know, Leanne Hornsey sort of resigned right after an all-hands meeting. So it was very sudden and unexpected. So it sort of came amidst media scrutiny, but we don't know exactly what particular incident really convinced her to resign or Uber to sort of push in that direction.
Meantime, the COO that Dara Khosrowshahi brought in to help right the ship, the New York Times had some reporting about some very off-color remarks he made in a meeting about an ad campaign featuring mixed-race couples. Along the lines of, how often do you really see mixed-race couples?
Yeah, I think the defense is sort of, you know, analyzing the ad, trying to understand sort of whether the ad represented the people they were targeting. But clearly people in the room felt it was off-color. We don't know sort of exactly what was said. He's certainly soul-searching and trying to sort of get some leadership help around what exactly he should say. It was sort of a terrible moment for Uber to have, you know, the turnaround crew basically sort of get hit with the same type of allegations that, you know, Travis Kalanick and his leadership team sort of would have faced. Very hard for Dara Khosrowshahi, who sort of left a lot of the day-to-day leadership to Barney Harford. So you have this guy who's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, now is sort of emblematic of the behavior they were trying to leave in the past.
Now, Dara has made some other high-profile hires, like Tony West, the chief legal officer, hasn't made high-profile female hires, Lane, and also seems to be having trouble getting the ship in order. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's not a question of if, but when. Dara's got a lot of work to do ahead of a hopeful IPO next year. I think he's going to look to the existing bench outside of the tech sector, right? So there's a lot of folks that are in corporate America who've proven themselves in various capacities, but he's got to convince them that this is the company that's okay to come to now, and then he's got to bring them on board. That takes time. It's not overnight. He hasn't been in the job long enough to have completely built out a full leadership team.
I did speak with Tony West, and he said it was a long process making the decision to leave his comfortable job at Pepsi and join Uber. What are you hearing from people who work inside the company about whether there really has been a true culture shift?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think the culture shift is being felt among the entire team. It's a huge company now, but the folks that have been there for a long time, 4 years plus, which is funny because in tech we say 4 years is a long time. In the real world it's not. The folks that have been there for more than 4 years feel like it's a new day. It's a new company with new leadership, and the problems of 4+ years ago are behind them, and they're excited and pretty bold about the future.
Eric, meantime, regulatory issues continue. Now in New York, we have the city council poised to approve a cap on licenses for Uber and other ride-sharing drivers, which would be a pretty
terrible
big blow.
For Uber. Terrible. I mean, I think old guard Uber, I'm curious what Lane thinks. I mean, Uber beat Bill de Blasio back and gave it all this room to grow. And obviously, it's sort of locked in some of those gains, but any sort of idea of a cap would be terrible for Uber, and then minimum guarantees on drivers would distort the marketplace. So from a business perspective, it's pretty shocking, and definitely sort of Travis Kalanick crowd sort of asking, did Dara invest in sort of the war room style fight with New York that they'd done? And I'm curious what you were sort of
How
involved.
terrible, Lane.
Well, I mean, for
And
what?
did Dara mess up here?
So there's a question about whether or not tech companies need to hire policy people, and this is definitely an example of the Full Employment Act for policy folks.
They have policy.
They have,
But I think most tech companies are going to need more, and this is why. Regulations always come back. Regulators are always looking for the easy way out. And in this case, this is the easy way out. Congestion pricing, actually changing the price of taxi medallions, helping the people that are most vulnerable in New York, those are big problems to solve. What's an easy one? Capping Uber.
Right.
That's something you can do with the stroke of a pen.
Now, got to ask you about one more story, because before you came on the show, you sold some of your Tesla shares before Elon tweeted that he was thinking about taking it private. You still have some shares.
I still, maybe not enough. It depends
You missed out on the bump, but what's your take on this as an investor?
Well, I'm hopeful that the news today means something big is happening, and that is good for my remaining stock. And on the other hand, I'm hoping I didn't really screw up this morning.
Just as an Uber reporter, it's funny, Uber preparing to go public next year, and now Tesla going private. It's just such a reversal, just two ships passing in the night.
And we still haven't quite determined how serious Elon Musk is about this, but Lane, does his capriciousness and unpredictability bother you?
I mean, one of the reasons I'm an investor in Tesla is because it is so exciting and unpredictable that you just have to get along for the ride.